On our birthday list today, celebrating his 55th birthday, actor Paul Guilfoyle. He is Captain Jim Brass on the original CSI, the Las Vegas version. Who Are You could also be the theme song for this next segment, really, because we have in the studio with us right now somebody who is making a concerted effort to introduce himself to people in mid-Michigan. His name is Kande Ngalamulume. And despite that handful of a name, he is running for Congress, hoping to take on Mike Rogers in the fall. Good morning.
Good morning, Walt. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good to have you. Obviously, taking on an established incumbent like Mike Rogers, especially somebody who's so good at raising money, a very daunting task. But you're running on some pretty specific issues based on your experience throughout the years in mid-Michigan.
Absolutely. And let me just say that, this area is yearning for bold leadership in Washington. And if you look at Rogers, during his tenure in Washington, has not been able to provide that sort of leadership in Congress. And so really, 10 years of Rogers in Washington is a lost decade for Michigan.
One of the most contentious issues of the last several months has been and will continue to be health care. Yep. And there you can very easily draw the line between where you stand and where he stands.
Absolutely. Well, for the last 4 years, I worked at Independence Blue Cross in Philadelphia. I was a senior business analyst in corporate finance, and so I understand this issue very well. And it was sort of mind-boggling that when you consider that, over 3/4 of Americans get their health care through their employers. And so Michigan being, a state in which we have the highest unemployment rate in the country, tells you two things. It tells you that, number one, we have a lot of people that are unemployed, and number two, a lot of people that don't have health insurance. And so for Mike Rogers to vote, which he's done consistently and repeatedly, voting against the interests of his constituents, it was disheartened that he would vote against health care legislation.
And you're not even satisfied with what passed in the Congress right now, that the bill the president signed doesn't go far enough.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I should mention, as I said earlier, that Mike Rogers, during these years in Congress, hasn't sponsored even one piece of legislation. And that's why we need the people of this district are yearning for new leadership, and I think it's high time for Mike Rogers and the 8th District to go their separate ways. In terms of the health care bill, the first thing that I'm going to do in Congress is sponsor legislation, in which my campaign released a press release last week, which I'm calling for the insurance exchanges, which are set to go live 2014. But given my experience in healthcare, I know that the industry has capabilities to offer various plans in these exchanges and have them open starting January 1 of 2012. And I think we can do that, and that's why it's particularly important that we have somebody in Washington who, such as myself, who has experience in the healthcare industry, so that I can help in terms of shepherding this process through and make sure that this bill is properly enacted.
One of the things that just bugs me about the political debate is the influence of wordmeisters like Frank Luntz, mm-hmm. who does polling for the Republicans, then comes up with phrases like death tax and government-run health care,
sure.
and endless financial bailouts. In the case of health care, how can any rational person call what passed government-run health care when it's still being run by the insurance companies?
Right, and I think that's why it's important for us to note, and I've been noting this when I go and make remarks and talk to individuals, to say, look, if you have insurance, you're going to get to keep your insurance. In terms of death panel, at Blue Cross, I was able to see with my own eyes that, in cases in which we denied claims for people who have paid premiums over the years, and I've seen with my own eyes where an individual's claims started outpacing their premiums. In other words, their claim volume was greater than the revenue we were getting in premiums, and so therefore we had to roll them off of our books. And so that essentially,
and that's a nonprofit.
That's a nonprofit, exactly right. So I think it's just a matter of when you see people like Frank Luntz, who are just basically being paid to come up with catchphrases and sound bites, I think we have to attack that and just really debunk those myths.
Well, in future discussions, I want to talk about other issues, but I think it's important to let people know a little bit about who you are. You are not a native of the United States. You came here with your father when he decided to attend Michigan State University.
Yeah, well, my father, actually, the first place where we settled was Athens, Ohio, where my father was doing a master's at Ohio University. And then we moved to East Lansing in 1990, in the spring of 1990, and so... and where my father started his PhD program here at Michigan State University. Yeah.
And you're a graduate of East Lansing High School.
Yep, I graduated East Lansing High School in 1997, and then I went on to Michigan State, of course, and graduated there in 2002. I studied business and couldn't find a job, sadly, when I graduated, and so that's why I relocated to Philadelphia, where I spent the last 8 years working, mainly in financial services sector. But as I mentioned, the past 4 years I was at Blue Cross as a senior business analyst, and I decided to quit that job to come back here and tackle some of the big issues that we were facing that's plaguing the state. Mainly,
why? Why'd you come back?
Well, my father asked me the same thing. He said, you have a great job. You have incredible benefits. Obviously, working for a health insurer.
At least you had coverage.
At least I had coverage. Exactly right. And he says, well, why would you want to do this? And Michigan is a tough place. They're going through tough times and they're a bit of a mess. And I said, Dad, I love my home state. I love my home district, and this country is going through a national rebuilding effort, and we're building our military, our infrastructure, our institution, and Michigan needs to be part of that effort. We can't miss the boat on this particular issue, and so that's why I wanted to come back. And really, what really saddens me is the fact that when I look at all my friends who I went through East Lansing High School with, and who went on to Michigan State, my own sister went to Albion College. They've all left the state. We have a serious brain drain issue here in the state, and so we have to work hard to ensure that when our kids are graduating from our fine institutions of higher learning, that they're finding economic opportunities here in the state, so that they can work and pay taxes and have families here, because we need those resources. We need that revenue at the state level so we can deal with issues of education, infrastructure, as I mentioned, and to ensure that we're really rebuilding the state, which we desperately need to do.
On a political side, you have a very daunting task. In addition to taking on an established incumbent, you are yourself pretty well unknown, although once people see your name, they're going to remember it. Yeah. If they can't pronounce it, at least they're going to remember it.
Absolutely.
But also, you got to raise money. You got to raise a lot of money, probably $1 million, $1.5 million to run this campaign. Have you got commitments?
Well, we just really started our fundraising operations. We really ramped that up in the last week or so, and we're going to have a series of fundraisers here in the area. I have a fundraiser in Washington D.C. on May 19th coming up, and we're working with to get endorsement and support from the labor unions, and I think it's going to be a tough challenge, and particularly because we're in. People are struggling. We're still, we still have a high unemployment, particularly here in the state of Michigan. And so my hope is that we're able to do what we can and raise sufficient amount, and the National Party will then help us in the fall. Although they're at this point, they're not targeting this race, but I think this race is particularly important.
Well, they got a tough time. They got 3 other races they got to take care of in Michigan as well, in the 1st, as well as the 7th, and as well as in the 8th district, and also the Gary Peters district. So it's going to be interesting. Look forward to talking with you more as time goes on about these issues.
Okay.
And come back regularly.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me again.